Hey guys, welcome back to Exploring Careers. You're joined by me, Mitch, as always, and really lucky today. We're joined by Richard Wallis, who is the Managing Director of KFC in the South Pacific region. Thanks for jumping on today, Richard.
Thanks for having me, Mitchell.
Excited to get stuck into this one. Now, I've obviously said it off the bat there, Managing Director. Sounds quite like a grand role and maybe sounds a bit intimidating. Can you explain what that actually is to our audience who might not actually know what it is that a managing director does?
I guess it means the buck stops with me about how the KFC brand operates in Australia and New Zealand. We have around about 750 odd restaurants in Australia and about 120 odd in New Zealand, so about 870, and about 40,000 team members, about 50 franchisees across the country. So everything to do with the brand, I guess. In Australia, I need to be across, and I guess I need to lead the team to continue to grow the KFC business and grow people across the region. Okay, all right, that makes sense. So I want to take you back to the start. Can you walk us through your schooling back at secondary school days? How did that all pan out? Did you finish year 12 and go off to further education, whether that be TAFE or uni, or were you straight into the workforce? Can you walk us through that a little bit? Yeah, so I went to school in Queensland, just up the road. Bremer State High School was the school I went to in Ipswich in Queensland. My parents still live there today. Fond memories, so went to secondary school there, and I wanted to go to university, but while I was at secondary school, I worked in a part-time job in a small QSR up there in Queensland. It was my first job, 15 years old, so I worked and studied at the same time, and then went to university and started studying psychology. I thought I'd study to be a doctor, actually, so I wanted to do postgraduate medicine, but I started working in Pizza Hut as a delivery driver, actually, as a job I was just going to do for a year about 27 years ago, and that ended up being the start of this career that I'm in now. So I've been in this business for 27 years. Started as a delivery driver, and in the meantime, during that time, I studied and got an MBA as well from University of New South Wales whilst I was working for KFC and Yum.
Okay, perfect. And a lot of people would think that they'd see managing director or one of these, I guess, big, job descriptions and titles, and they'd immediately think, okay, I need to go to uni, I need to study this, I need to go to TAFE, whatever it may be. Do you think that's 100% necessary these days, or do you think there are other pathways, I guess now more than ever, to different roles and different organisations across different industries? Do you think that, I guess, that stigma of you have to go to university is becoming a bit old-fashioned?
Look, I think what's become apparent is that you've got to be curious and you've got to be agile, I think. And to the extent that university helps you to learn in different ways, I think it can be valuable. To the extent that TAFE can do that, I think it can be valuable. And to the extent that you can learn and meet a whole group of new people in the workplace, I think that's valuable as well. I think travel can be valuable. I think, there's so many ways of learning and growing. I think that as an organisation, and I wouldn't be alone on this, I'm sure you probably hear this from lots of senior executives, is that we look for someone who genuinely wants to grow and learn and contribute. And I think those people come in different shapes and different backgrounds and all of that. So I think, when you go to university, it often opens your mind to different experiences. When you go to TAFE, it opens your mind to different experiences. But in the same way, different work experiences and even different geographical locations can give you very similar experiences. So it's not as straightforward as I think and linear as it might have been in the past, where you either chose a vocation, vocational education, you took the sort of, the apprenticeships, traineeships path, or, you went to university and you became a doctor and lawyer. I mean, those decisions are so extreme now. There's so many places in between. Literally 2 weeks ago, I met up with a couple of restaurant managers from Wollongong, actually. It just happened they're from Wollongong, but we have a partnership with the University of Wollongong. And these guys had chosen to go straight from high school into careers with us. And they're in their early 20s and they've managed to have a career. They're now restaurant managers running, I don't know, $7 or $8 million businesses themselves, 100 team members or whatever. And they've studied an MBA in their early 20s because the work, some of the traineeship work they'd done and the on-the-job work they'd done had qualified them to get some credit towards postgraduate degree in an executive MBA. And these guys had ended up at 23 years old with workplace experience, leadership experience, and then topped it off with university experience, which isn't linear, isn't the way that you would often hear that. I think back in my day anyway, it's not the way you hear about it.
No, perfect. And I think that's good. I think that's really exciting for our audience to hear, especially from a senior executive like yourself, that experience is experience, and there are multiple pathways available to you, and there's not real one correct one, I think, especially in years gone by, and hopefully that tide is starting to shift now. But I think there's been that, I guess, incorrect preconception that you have to go to uni if you want a good job, where, as you've just outlined there, that's just simply not true and not the case. And I really hope that tide is starting to turn and people realise that you can go to, pay for another further education provider. You can go and travel and maybe backpack and pull beers somewhere around the UK, and it's all just as valuable. So, and you mentioned before that you started with Pizza Hut as a delivery driver, and you've been in the industry all the way through there. So you must have some good delivery driver stories, which I'm keen to get to. No doubt you've seen some funky things. But are you able to walk us through your career progression a bit? So you started as a delivery driver, then what were the steps you made until you got to where we are today?
Well, look, I think to your point before about sort of the way I'd mapped my future, I think I'd mapped my future out in a very linear way. Like, I'd go to uni, I'll become a doctor, that's got a very reputable sort of, career path. I'll study and, I did well at school, so that should be what I do. And I think back then there was still some stigma attached with working for a quick service chain, and I'm sure that happens, and I'm sure there's still a bit of that stigma, but I never expected to meet some of the leaders that I met. And I think there's a bit of a fork in the road. I think the first thing is that when I started working at 15 years old, I'm a pretty shy individual. I'm actually an introvert, so, a bit sort of inwardly focused. And I tell you what, as soon as I started working in a restaurant, you realize that, I had to build some social skills actually. And it was a change. It changed my life in terms of my ability to interact with other people. And I think also it helped me deal with some of the stresses that might have happened otherwise if I was just solely focused on my family and on school, because you had this other outlet, other group of friends that I sort of built. But what happened was when I worked in a small QSR versus working for one like Pizza Hut, I realized the differences in, I guess, the people and the development that we had. And back then it was owned, Pizza Hut was owned by PepsiCo, which is obviously the company that owns Pepsi and also a lot of sort of Doritos and some of those chip brands as well. But they had systems and processes and training and development that was pretty incredible, actually. And I met a couple of great leaders, an area manager and a training manager who was sort of in charge of training, that had such a great grasp, and the teams just loved working for them. And it was eye-opening for me, to see how this organisation had grown. And I was going to go back and study, and then the area coach said to me, or the area manager said to me, "Look, do you want to stay as an assistant manager for a year?" And I thought, I'll do it for a year until I find a real job. And literally 27 years later, I'm still looking for a real job because it's been so much fun. And this industry is such a dynamic business to be part of. But look, I was an assistant manager for a couple of years, and then I was a restaurant manager, still in Pizza Hut in Brisbane. And then I joined the graduate program, which we have a graduate program in Sydney. And you needed to have done a degree for that particular program, but we have a similar program, a parallel program, which gives you similar career outcomes in the business as well now. But back then, I did that graduate program. I worked in human resources and in marketing, and learned a lot about both of those pieces in our business. And then I worked in the field with 40 restaurants for Pizza Hut as a training manager, sort of a HR manager for the field. I moved to Perth, WA, and I looked after that market for Pizza Hut. I came back and I did some finance work. I worked in finance and I got to sell some restaurants to some franchisees. I went to Melbourne and then I looked after HR for Victoria, Tasmania, South Australia. And then I moved back to Sydney and I looked after industrial relations. And look, I'm old, Mitchell, so I've got a long story, so I apologise. But then I headed up Pizza Hut in Australia, operations for Pizza Hut in Australia for a couple of years. And then I moved to Canada, Toronto. I lived over there and headed up Pizza Hut in Canada for 3 years. I had 3 winters over there. That was an experience, a winter in Canada with my family. Moved back to Singapore and I headed up KFC in Asia for a few years. And then in March 2020, just before COVID hit, actually, I moved back to Australia here to head up, as you said, the business in Australia and New Zealand. So that's been, I guess, the adventure I've been over the last 27 years.
Yeah, wow, amazing. And I think that's really important for people to see as a step-by-step, because as you mentioned there might be that misconception of, okay, working for a KFC is just what I'm going to do while I'm studying or part-time work, and then I'll focus on getting a real job in inverted commas later down the track. But what you're saying is, no, you stuck with them and you worked your way up the ladder, so to speak, did a few different things to the point where you're here now. And I think that's really important for people to see, that it isn't just the job before you get a real job. There are, yes, work in at the restaurant level and learn your skills there, and that's really important. And something you can do while you're studying. You can earn some money on the side and all that type of stuff, and it's fantastic. But there's full-time career opportunities past that, as you've just outlined. So I imagine that's something that's really important for you with KFC, is that career progression and making sure that people, starting as a teenager and I guess restaurant or store level, feel like there are those career progression opportunities and trying to keep them on board and part of the family, so to speak. Would that be right?
Yeah, that's right. Look, I think the great thing about our business, and again, we're probably not unique in this, but it's that career progression signals personal progression, so you're growing and learning yourself. And I think my experience has been the more that you can push yourself to get experiences and challenges that help you grow as an individual, the more opportunities, strangely enough, present themselves for you to grow as a career as well. And when we've got, as I said, 40,000 team members across the country, I think we've got a responsibility to give them growth and development while they're with us. And we know not everyone stays with KFC for their entire career, but I tell you, those that do actually stick around a long time, and I'm not unique. We've got a guy who's about to retire, actually, who's been in the KFC business for 42 years, and he's in Melbourne, and he's had a fantastic career across a number of different brands as well as different geographies, and he even met the Colonel. He worked with the Colonel back when the Colonel was alive. So, but all the way through to, I just met a guy this morning. I'm interviewing him for our graduate program. He studied arts law. He's 23. He studied whilst he was working as a restaurant manager full-time, and he wants to get in a graduate program, and so you've got this sort of diverse group of people that have both grown up in restaurants, become area coaches and evolved their career that way. And another young gentleman who started at 14, he's almost got long service leave at 23. I mean, it's pretty amazing to have long service leave at 24. You could take 8 weeks off and travel when you start in a business with us at sort of 14 years old. So it really is quite inspiring to meet people that at such a young age can have achieved so much. And I look back on my own experiences, and it took me a lot longer to really work out what I needed to do. And these guys just end up taking the experiences that are presented to them and max them out and get the personal growth, and ultimately, I think, get the career growth that comes with that. And often, whether it be within our organisation or outside of, and we even do something called My Plan, which is we ask our managers to sit down with the team members and ask them what they want to do with what they're studying, what they want to do. And what we find is, if we can tailor some of the experiences in a restaurant, let's say someone wants to be a teacher, we have training courses that we run regularly, both inside the restaurant and outside the restaurant, in classrooms and things like that, that we often get these people to have a go at it. So therefore, it gives them a chance to explore things that might help them grow, not just in our business, but I guess grow as individuals outside the business as well.
Yeah, perfect, awesome. And I guess that when people would look at a KFC or similar, you'd immediately think, okay, KFC, I'm either working at restaurant level or doing something similar to that, because that's what you think of. You think KFC, you think chicken, you think of the Colonel, as you said, and you might not immediately realise the scope behind that, and whether it's marketing or legal or HR, as you mentioned before. There's so many different opportunities for you, depending what your personal interests are, what your own personal skills are, etc., etc. So that's really great to hear. Now, one thing I did want to ask you, coming back to your personal role as managing director, do you have a typical 9 to 5, so to speak? I know the way of the world from a career point of view and a working point of view has changed a lot, especially over the past couple of years with what we've been through, which has changed the way of work for a lot of people. Does that apply for you as well? Do you have a 9 to 5? Are you flexible? Can you walk us through that a bit?
Yeah, look, I don't think our business has ever been 9 to 5. We have restaurants that are open till late at night, and they stop and start early in the morning. So, but in terms of our office, I think it probably pre-COVID was I'd suggest more like that. Albeit, I think we'd started to think about being more flexible, I think, for everyone. And I know this is I read an article this morning about this in the interview as well, is that it's become probably the talk of many large organisations, is what happens and what's the new way of working in the current environment, and even post-COVID, what does it mean? And I think for me, I landed just before COVID started. So really what I learned was that the pace of change suddenly like tripled, quadrupled in terms of what we needed to do quickly, and lots of things that came along with that. There was supply chain challenges. We couldn't get hold of chicken. There's boats were taking ages to come from overseas, and all of those sorts of things. And it meant that some of the things that we used to think were locked in, and the ways of getting things done couldn't be done anymore. And that included even how we work. So for me, I think it meant that I had a lot more flexibility in how I operated my job. And it meant I probably divided my time between doing lots of what I'm doing with you now, which is talking on Teams with people, to trying to get out to visit restaurants. And that's probably the bit that's been most challenging for us, is connecting with teams in restaurants. Because look, without a restaurant, we have no people above restaurant. Everything happens at the front line for us. So our restaurant teams are really important, and understanding what's happening for them is really a key to success in our business. So whilst we can do some things remotely, I think our culture and our ability to really run restaurants is based on us being able to get out and visit the restaurants. So I'd say one thing that I have been able to do more of is be more flexible with my time working from home. It's meant I've dropped my kids off at school in the morning, whereas normally I'd probably be on the way to the office at that point in time. So there's less time to get prepared if you're getting ready for a Teams call. It's also meant that I think I've got more time back on the weekend. On a 15-minute break, I'll chuck the washing into the washing machine, and then I have to do it on the weekend. So there's been some changes for that. But I think we've been on a journey over a long period of time about a bit more macro flexibility, flexibility for parents, for even for men wanting to take a couple of months off. We've introduced some of those sorts of things to give people a lot more flexibility about how they manage their family, as well as how they manage their lives. And I think COVID's helped accelerate that for us in particular. And we've realised that we don't have to have people necessarily based in Sydney anymore. So for example, I'm based in Brisbane, and I was always going to fly down to Sydney every week, Monday morning, and fly back on Thursday night or Friday or whatever. But I haven't had to do that. And we've got people now based in Melbourne and Adelaide and Brisbane as well, that actually work remotely and that still travel to the office. We think that's still important, but they can be quite flexible. And at restaurant level, there's always been a degree of flexibility just because of the nature of the job. The managers actually almost define their own rosters. They can decide whether they want to work some weekends and that midweek days are off for them, or vice versa. So I think our business itself has always had a bit of flexibility, but it's been accelerated over the last couple of years.
Yeah, awesome. And that kind of leads me into what I wanted to talk about next, which was the future of work, because we've always been moving forward, but over the past few years, as you just touched on, it seems like things have accelerated considerably. and now more so than ever, people are thinking about, okay, what's the future of work look like? What industry am I going to choose? Because is my job going to be replaced by a robot or something crazy? You know, all these questions that people were not asking, you know, only a few years ago, and now all of a sudden front of mind. And people are really stopping and thinking about, well, you know, what am I going to do? Is this place going to be right for me, you know, in 5, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it may be? So what does the future of work look like for you guys, do you think, and the industry as a whole, you know, moving forward 10, 20 years from now?
Look, I think one of the keys for the future for us is probably the role of technology in making it easier for our team members, actually. So, you know, there's lots of talk about, you know, completely automating jobs and all those sorts of things. And I tend to think that that's not the trajectory that we're on. What we're looking at is, gosh, it's complex to run a business like ours now. We have a lot of customers. We have lots of different channels. We've got delivery, we've got carry out, we've got drive through, and all those things. It's very difficult to run that. So using technology to help make jobs simpler is fundamental. The second thing is using technology to help us move quicker, and having, you know, we use it's a catchphrase at the moment, I guess, but we're looking at making our organization more agile and having different ways of working to help us make decisions much more quickly and execute things more quickly, as opposed to taking years to make decisions. Can we make decisions in weeks, not years? And that's a journey for us, because we still ultimately sell the same product, and we want to make that product as great as it can be. And we still believe that, you know, people's desire for a great tasting product is perennial. We think that's something that will be timeless, and we think in 10 years' time there'll still be people that want to enjoy our delicious Kentucky Fried Chicken, but the way that we make it might be different. You know, it might be, you know, there might be people doing different types of roles, but I think the other thing we believe will be fundamental is that we believe we'll still need incredibly talented people and a great culture where people want to actually come to work. So, you know, we're focused on how do we make the jobs easier for people, and how do we make sure that people want to ultimately continue to work for us? And you know, there's so many options there and it's such a competitive workforce at the moment that why would you work for KFC? And so we're trying to design jobs and career paths that actually make people want to keep working for us and love the environment, love the people they work with, and ultimately love delivering great tasting chicken to customers across Australia.
Well, I think you'll always have a customer in me, because I am prone to a zinger box, and I can't see that waning anytime soon. So I'll always be there. But you mentioned it before. Why would you want to work for KFC? So why should, you know, young people watching this today consider, you know, a long-term career, you know, with KFC? What would you say to students, or maybe, you know, young people watching this, or parents or career advisors or whatever it may be, who are watching this and going, okay, yeah, this sounds like, you know, it could be an option for me. What would you say to those people to try to get them across the line, I guess? Yeah.
Well, look, I think the first thing is that KFC isn't just KFC. We actually are part of a bigger group called Yum, and Yum we have 4 brands in our portfolio. We have KFC, Pizza Hut, Taco Bell, and another chain called Habit Burger Grill, which is mostly in the US at the moment. But and we are the biggest restaurant company in the world. We have around about 53,000 restaurants around the world. We build around 3,000 restaurants a year. I mean, and in KFC, I think we're building a new restaurant every 2 hours, I think is the number. So we are a huge growth company that really, I think, is such an authentic place to work. I mean, we are very clear about what we do, and we deliver delicious tasting food. But I think beneath all of that, we think that in order for people to buy our product, they need to buy our brand, and they need to buy what happens in the restaurant. And so therefore, we want to create opportunities for people in our business that help them grow as individuals and give them an authentic career as well. But as I said, we are one of the top 500 companies in the world as Yum, one of the biggest restaurant companies in the world. But I think on top of that, you know, what I mentioned before in terms of my own journey is there was a fork in the road when I was actually quite young, where when I came to work in QSR in our business, that I think it was a turning point for me psychologically. And the reason I say that is The last couple of years, we've actually looked at some of the mental health challenges that have come up across. I think COVID's obviously triggered lots of it, with lots of people being stuck at home and lacking social interaction. We are a service company, and I think one of the things that I personally found, and I know that we look at the organisation, that is, when you are of service, it actually is quite a great resilience builder. It actually helps you build a social network, and it also protects you from mental challenges throughout your life as well. And I know some of the people that I met way back 27 years ago are still great friends today. So I've benefited personally from, I guess, the ability to meet a group of people that I love working with, and that's been part of my entire career. I talk to people today that say the same thing. It's a family that I think, on top of that nice, the nice place to work, or the great place to work that we have, I think there's so many skills and so many roles that you can perform that take you across such a huge range of disciplines, as I said before, between human resources, marketing, supply chain, operations, and you never know where that's going to take you, whether it be within our business or outside of our business. And I think the step up you get by starting in our organisation is you get incredible leadership. I think we have some amazing leaders at restaurant level, and we have some amazing leadership programs that actually help, I think, people grow and develop. And one thing that we just actually bought a couple of years ago, we bought a company called Heartstyles, which is a company that was founded on building a character development tool, which actually gives you a sense of, how do you use humility and love and compassion to be a better leader versus using fear and pride to sort of drive your leadership. And we think it makes a difference to people's character and their own development as human beings. And in the last year or so, we've managed to put about 2,000 of our team through that program. And if you talk to the managers that have gone through the program, they are changed people, and that's changed their lives, not just at work, but I think interactions with their friends and their families as well, in terms of their leadership profile. So I don't want to oversell it, Mitchell, but you know what? I think I'm a testament to what this business can do. And if you'd asked me whether I'd be here in this job talking to you 27 years ago, I'd say, look, all I wanted to do was wait a year till I found a real job. This is genuinely incredible company that I think has given me so much, and I feel like I've got a responsibility to give it back to the people and the teams that are growing through our organisation right now.
No, definitely, and I think that's very evident from your own story, and what you've just outlined there is that people who join the KFC family, as you said, aren't just a spoke on the wheel, so to speak, and that you're gonna help them grow and develop, not only professionally, but personally as well, which I think is really important. And as I mentioned, you just need to look at your own story from where you started to where you are now, and the evidence is there. Now, one thing I did want to ask you as well is, obviously our audience and a bulk of the people watching this will be students at secondary school level, or they'll be the key influencers, whether that be parents or guardians or teachers and career advisors. It's often a very stressful time for young people completing their secondary schooling, going through year 9, 10, 11, 12, whatever it may be. You're asked to make a lot of important decisions at a very young age. So, people are asking you while you're in year 10 and you're 15 years old, what subjects are you going to choose? Are you going to uni? If so, what are you studying? What are you going to do in the future? And you're like, well, hold on, I'm at 15, I'm more worried about what parties are going on the weekend and who's going out with who and that type of thing. So it's often very stressful, and you're getting pulled in so many different directions at such a young age. What advice would you give to those young people potentially watching this today who are in that boat at the moment, and kind of going through that journey, finishing up their schooling and getting ready for the next stage of their lives?
Look, I think, and what I've seen myself with lots of people, I think that the environment today is different to what I went through when I was younger, and there's a lot more pressure on so many fronts to actually to feel like you've got the answers. What I've found, though, is if you focus on the next step that you're going to take, what is it that you're doing today? What can you do to maximize whatever it is you're doing? If it's schoolwork, how do you make sure that you deliver whatever it is that you need to deliver from a schoolwork perspective? If you're working in one of our businesses, how do you make sure the 3 hours that you're there, you maximize your contribution there? And what I've found is if you focus on what you can control in the short term, the things you don't control tend to come to you, and if you do the best you can in the things that are within your control right now, whether it be relationships that you have with your family, if you focus on those things, it's funny how other things outside of your control tend to come to you. And I think I've said that around my own personal experiences. I think I chose sometimes the harder road because I felt like it was a challenge, and I've never actually had a situation where choosing the hard roads had a negative impact for me. It's been one that has delivered outcomes for me. But I'd never planned out my future, and didn't put pressure on myself to have solutions for the next 10 years. And I think given the pace of change in the world today, trying to work out what's in front of you today, what can you work on today that will help you, that gives you a sense of control of your current situation.
No, perfect. That's great advice, and I couldn't agree more. You don't need to have your whole life planned out in front of you, especially when we're talking about when you're a teenager, 15, 16 years old. I think just focus on what's in front of you and let the rest happen, and keep an open mind. I think is important as well. Don't pigeonhole yourself, and more importantly, don't let other people pigeonhole you. I think is important as well. Now, away from work, I don't want to keep it all work and all serious. What do you like to get up to away from work? You've obviously mentioned travelling a few times. You live in Canada and Singapore, I think you said as well. So is that an interest to you? What do you like to get up to outside of the world of KFC?
Well, look, I've fallen in love with cycling. I love riding my bike, and I've become a mammal, middle-aged man in lycra, I think is what they call us. But
I like that.
Balancing physical and probably some of the work stuff that I do, as well as family. I've found that it's really a great way for me to manage. Physical exertion helps me a bit with stress, so that tends to be quite good. And I take my bike everywhere I go. So when I travel, if I travel overseas, I take my bike with me. So I was in Florida a few weeks ago for a conference, and I rode my bike around Miami and places like that. So it was good to explore. I love to travel where I can. I was in Tasmania the other week with my kids. I took them down for a camper van trip. But I think it's really just, I love experiencing new things, and I'm very curious and like to learn things as well. So I find travel's great for me. I find meeting people's very good for me as well. Even though I'm introverted, I've learned to actually value discussions with people around me, and I find meeting our teams in restaurants is also fascinating. I really enjoy that a lot. So maybe it's not as exciting, but I think that's the extent of my my life outside of work and family.
No, very nice, very nice. Now, last question I'm going to leave you on, and I can't not ask, and before I jumped in here today, I had people in the office saying, make sure you ask. The 11 secret herbs and spices. Do you know them? And any insight into what they may be, or a couple of what's in there, or?
No, don't know what they are, and they actually have 2 safes actually in the US, one with each half of the ingredient, and no one really makes the whole lot. So no one really knows what the full the 11 secret herbs and spices are. So your guess is as good as mine, Mitchell. But keep trying the product until you might give you more of a sense. So tell everyone, keep buying it, see if you can work it out.
No, well, it was worth a crack, but I definitely will keep buying it. As I said, love a zinger box, so no, there will be no shortage of attempts from me to try to work it out. But Richard, it's been so great chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been great to hear not only about your own personal career journey and how you've ended up to where you are today, but about life and careers at KFC as a whole. It's been great chatting to you, and hopefully can have you back on in the not too distant future and have a chat a bit more.
Mitchell, appreciate the time, and if any parents ever want to speak to me about what a career at KFC is like, give me a call. I said that this morning to a young team member, that I'm the biggest advocate for young people growing through our organisation. So I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about it today.
No worries. Thanks.
Thanks, Mitchell.